Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're tackling a topic many of you have been asking about: deep tech and natural disaster prevention.
It's definitely a hot topic right now, and for good reason.
Exactly. And we've got some incredible research to dig into today from the Prevent Project.
Present.
Yeah, it's an Erasmus Plus funded project that's all about creating a university-level module on using deep tech for preventing natural disasters.
Oh, wow. So this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. They're actually building a course around this.
It's the real deal.
Yeah.
And what's even cooler is that they didn't just pull this curriculum out of thin air.
Oh.
The Prevent team actually interviewed professionals in the field to figure out what skills are actually needed to succeed in this line of work.
So like real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience informing what students should be learning.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so exciting, I think. It's like we're getting a sneak peek into the future of disaster prevention education. So if our listeners are suddenly tasked with building this course, where should they even begin?
Well, the Prevent Project outlines 6 key learning objectives. And the first one might seem a bit obvious, but it's absolutely crucial.
Hit me with it.
Students need a deep understanding of natural disasters themselves.
Okay, that makes sense, but why wouldn't a general overview be enough? I mean, we all know that hurricanes are powerful storms, earthquakes shake the ground, and volcanoes spew lava. What else is there to know?
Well, that's just scratching the surface. Think about it. Deep tech solutions require a deep understanding of the problem they're trying to solve.
Okay, I'm starting to see your point. So it's not enough to just know that landslides happen. You need to understand the underlying geological forces at play.
Exactly. Imagine a student trying to develop an AI system to predict landslides. If they only have surface-level knowledge about geological formations, soil composition, and erosion patterns, their AI is going to be about as useful as a chocolate teapot.
Okay, point taken. No chocolate teapots in disaster prevention. Got it.
Mm.
What's the next learning objective?
Mastering a toolbox of deep tech applications, of course. And we're not just talking about your usual suspects like AI and machine learning.
Oh, there's more. Spill the beans. What else is on the menu?
Well, there's the Internet of Things, or IoT for short, which can be used for real-time environmental monitoring.
Okay, I'm listening. How would that work in a disaster prevention scenario?
Imagine a network of sensors strategically placed in landslide-prone areas. These sensors are constantly collecting data. Things like ground vibrations, moisture levels, even subtle shifts in the Earth's magnetic field.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So this network of sensors is essentially acting as an early warning system.
Precisely. If the sensors detect any unusual activity, they can trigger an alert, giving people time to evacuate before disaster strikes.
That's incredible. It's like having a digital guardian angel watching over those vulnerable areas.
It really is amazing how far technology has come. And then there's the unexpected application of VR and AR.
VR and AR, as in virtual reality and augmented reality. I thought those were mostly used for gaming and entertainment. What do they have to do with disaster prevention?
Well, they can be used to create incredibly realistic simulations of disaster scenarios.
Hold on. Are you telling me I could learn how to respond to a volcanic eruption from the comfort of my classroom?
Precisely. VR simulations can recreate the sights, sounds, even the emotional stress of a disaster, all in a safe, controlled environment.
Wow, that's amazing. Sign me up for that class. But let's be real, you can't solve everything with fancy simulations. What about the hands-on, practical side of things?
The Prevent Project definitely doesn't skimp on that. Their third learning objective is all about equipping students with practical skills.
Practical skills, like what? Give me some examples.
We're talking about things like data analysis, mapping, scenario planning, the real nitty-gritty of disaster prevention work.
Okay, so not just understanding the theory behind natural disasters and the technologies used to prevent them, but actually being able to use those technologies to analyze data, interpret satellite imagery, and develop those early warning systems we were talking about.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You can give someone all the ingredients for a gourmet meal, but if they don't know how to cook, they'll just end up with a mess. The same applies to deep tech.
So it's like, you can have all the fancy AI algorithms in the world, but if you don't know how to clean, process, and interpret the data, you're not going to get very far.
Precisely. And that's why the Prevent Project places such a strong emphasis on these practical skills. They're absolutely essential for anyone working in this field.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. Deep understanding, diverse tech skills, and the ability to actually apply those skills in a practical setting. What's next on our disaster prevention curriculum checklist?
Well, all of this amazing tech, all of these practical skills, they're useless without the human element.
Right. In a disaster situation, there's so much at stake. It's not just about finding a technical solution. It's about making the right choices to protect lives and minimize damage.
You hit the nail on the head. That's why the fourth learning objective is all about decision making and ethics.
So it's not enough to just know how to build an early warning system. You also need to understand the ethical implications of using that system. Like who gets access to the alerts? How do you ensure fairness and equity in disaster response?
Exactly. Students need to grapple with these complex questions. They need to understand things like health and safety protocols, relevant legislation, and the potential unintended consequences of using these powerful technologies.
So it's about more than just technical competence. It's about developing a sense of responsibility, a deep understanding of the ethical dimensions of disaster prevention work.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, let's move on to the fifth learning objective, which is often overlooked, but absolutely essential.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is this often overlooked but crucial skill?
Collaboration and project management.
Ah, yes, the unsung heroes of any successful project. You can have the most brilliant minds, the cutting-edge tech, the best intentions in the world, but if you can't work together effectively, you're not going to get very far.
Couldn't agree more. This module really hammers home the point that teamwork, communication, and leadership are just as vital as coding skills when it comes to tackling complex challenges like disaster prevention.
So we're not just creating tech wizards, we're cultivating a generation of collaborators, communicators, and leaders who can bring people together, share knowledge, and work towards a common goal.
Exactly. It's about fostering those soft skills that are so often overlooked but absolutely essential for success in any field, especially one as collaborative and high stakes as disaster prevention.
So to recap, we've got a solid understanding of the disaster itself, a diverse set of tech skills, practical know-how, ethical awareness, and the ability to work effectively as a team. Anything else our future disaster prevention heroes need to conquer?
One more crucial piece, and it might surprise you.
Okay, lay it on me. What's this final piece of the puzzle?
Legal and ethical considerations.
Wait, haven't we already covered that under the ethics objective?
It's definitely related, but this goes a bit deeper. It's about equipping students with a solid understanding of data privacy laws, intellectual property rights, and the potential legal ramifications of deploying certain technologies.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's not just about being ethically mindful, it's also about being legally savvy, understanding the rules of the game.
Precisely. Imagine you're developing an AI-powered early warning system that relies on personal data collected from people's smartphones. That raises all sorts of privacy concerns.
You need to make sure you're not violating anyone's privacy, that you're handling that data responsibly and ethically.
Exactly. This module recognizes that with great power comes great responsibility, and it wants to ensure that future disaster prevention professionals are equipped to navigate these complex legal and ethical landscapes.
Okay, so we've covered the 6 key learning objectives. It's a pretty comprehensive list. But I have to ask, how do we make sure students don't just memorize this stuff for the exam and then promptly forget it all? How do we make this knowledge truly stick?
That's where things get really interesting. This is where the Prevent project's focus on teaching methodologies comes into play. And it all starts with recognizing that multitasking is a myth.
Wait, are you telling me all those years of juggling a million things at once were for nothing? I mean, I pride myself on being a master multitasker.
Well, not for nothing, but when it comes to deep learning, our brains actually work best when we focus on one thing at a time.
Okay, so you're saying that if we want students to really grasp these complex concepts, we need to encourage them to slow down, focus, and really engage with the material one step at a time.
You got it. This module encourages instructors to ditch the multitasking myth and create learning experiences that encourage deep, focused attention.
So instead of trying to cram everything in at once, we're better off guiding students through a step-by-step process, allowing them to master one concept before moving on to the next.
Precisely. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't try to lay the foundation, frame the walls, and install the roof all at the same time. You'd approach it systematically, one step at a time.
That's a great analogy. It makes perfect sense. So single tasking is in, multitasking is out. What other brain-boosting strategies does this module recommend?
Well, alongside ditching the multitasking myth, they emphasize tapping into the power of intrinsic motivation.
Meaning students are more likely to learn and retain information if they're genuinely interested in the subject matter, right?
Precisely. And it's not just about choosing a topic that's inherently fascinating, it's about creating learning experiences that spark curiosity, encourage exploration, and allow students to connect with the material on a personal level.
So less about force-feeding information and more about igniting a passion for discovery. I like the sound of that. But how do we actually do that? How do we create those kinds of engaging learning experiences?
Well, this module suggests some really creative ways to do that. For example, one strategy is to present students with real-world challenges and let them use their newfound deep tech skills to come up with solutions.
So instead of just lecturing about the theoretical applications of AI in disaster prevention, you might challenge them to design an AI-powered system that could predict the path of a wildfire, for example.
Exactly. That kind of hands-on problem-solving approach is much more engaging than passively listening to lectures, and it allows students to see the real-world relevance of what they're learning.
I love that. It's about making the learning feel real, meaningful, and connected to something bigger than themselves. What other strategies does the module recommend?
Well, there are a couple of intriguingly named activities like 100 Shades of Grey and De Bono Hats. They sound a bit mysterious, but they're basically designed to encourage creative thinking and help students approach problems from multiple perspectives.
Okay, now you've really piqued my curiosity. I'm dying to know more about these activities. But before we get lost in the weeds of specific activities, let's zoom back out and talk about the overall structure of this module. How much time are we talking about here? Is this a one-semester crash course or something more substantial?
This module is designed to be a full academic year experience, and there's a good reason for that.
A full academic year. Wow, that's quite a commitment. What's so special about that second semester? Why not just cram everything into a single semester?
That's when things get really exciting. The first semester focuses on laying the foundation, building those core skills and knowledge we've been discussing.
So imagine our student spends the first semester learning about AI, IoT, and VR. And then in the second semester, they get to use those technologies to develop a prototype for an early warning system for floods or something.
Exactly. It's like a capstone project where they get to pull everything together and demonstrate their mastery of the material in a practical, meaningful way.
That sounds incredibly valuable, both in terms of solidifying their learning and preparing them for future careers.
Precisely. And the best part is, it's not just about theory and simulations. This module encourages instructors to incorporate opportunities for real-world experience, such as internships with organizations working in the field of disaster prevention.
That's amazing. Imagine getting to work alongside professionals, using cutting-edge tech to solve real-world problems. What better way to prepare for a career in this field?
I know, right? It's like the ultimate learning laboratory. And I think it highlights something really important about this module. It's not just about acquiring knowledge. It's about equipping students with the skills, experiences, and mindsets they need to make a real difference in the world.
I love that. It's about empowering them to become agents of change, using their knowledge and skills to create a safer, more resilient future.
Exactly. It's about giving them the tools they need to go out there and make a real impact. And that's what makes this whole conversation so exciting. We're not just talking about theoretical concepts, we're talking about building a better future.
I couldn't agree more. But before we get too carried away with saving the world, let's pause here for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from the 6 key learning objectives to the importance of single tasking and intrinsic motivation.
It's been quite a journey already.
It has. But there's still much more to explore, including those intriguing activities you mentioned earlier. So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of deep tech and natural disaster prevention.
Welcome back. I'm ready to keep unpacking how to make this disaster prevention course amazing.
Me too. We've got those 6 learning objectives as our roadmap. But how do we actually teach this stuff? What does that look like in the classroom?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And this is where the Prevent project gets really interesting. They've taken all these brain science insights and turned them into practical teaching methods. And it all starts with something called metacognition.
Metacognition. Now, there's a word I haven't heard in a while. Remind me what that's all about.
It's basically thinking about thinking. Sounds a bit abstract, I know, but it's really about helping students become aware of their own learning process. What are their strengths? What are they struggling with? How do they approach new information?
So instead of just passively absorbing information, we're asking students to become active participants in their own learning journey.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to take ownership of their learning. And the Prevent module suggests some really concrete ways to do this. Things like reflective journaling, where students write about their learning experiences, identify areas where they're struggling, and brainstorm strategies for improvement.
That sounds incredibly valuable, especially in a field as complex as deep tech and disaster prevention, where there's so much to learn and the stakes are so high. I mean, we're talking about potentially saving lives here.
Absolutely. And the module also suggests incorporating regular self-assessment exercises. So instead of just relying on the instructor's feedback, students are encouraged to evaluate their own progress, identify areas for growth, and set personal learning goals.
So they're not just learning about disaster prevention, they're also learning how to learn.
Precisely. It's about equipping them with the skills and strategies they need to become lifelong learners, which is essential in any field, but especially one that's constantly evolving like this one.
And I bet that kind of self-awareness ties in beautifully with the idea of intrinsic motivation we talked about earlier.
You're spot on. The more students understand their own learning process, the more they can tap into those internal motivators. They're no longer just studying to get a good grade, they're learning because they're genuinely curious, engaged, and invested in their own growth.
And isn't that the ultimate goal of education? To foster a lifelong love of learning, to create individuals who are passionate about expanding their knowledge and skills, who are driven by a thirst for discovery.
Exactly. And to support that, the Prevent module emphasizes two key approaches: task-based learning and student autonomy.
Okay, break those down for me. What do those look like in practice?
Task-based learning is all about giving students challenging real-world tasks and letting them figure out how to solve them using the knowledge and skills they're learning.
So instead of just lecturing at students, we're giving them a problem to solve, a puzzle to piece together, a challenge to overcome.
Exactly. It's about creating a learning environment that feels more like a real-world research lab than a traditional classroom. And student autonomy is all about giving students the freedom to explore, experiment, and make their own choices about how they approach their learning.
So it's like we're saying, here's the challenge, here's some tools, now go figure it out.
In a nutshell, yes. It's about trusting students to take ownership of their learning, to be creative, to think outside the box. And this is where those intriguing activities you mentioned earlier come in: 100 Shades of Grey and de Bono hats.
Okay, you've kept me in suspense long enough. Spill the beans. What are these mysterious activities all about?
All right. 100 Shades of Grey is all about challenging assumptions and encouraging students to see problems from multiple perspectives.
Sounds intriguing. How does it work?
It involves presenting students with a complex ethical dilemma, like using AI to prioritize aid distribution after a disaster. Then you ask them to analyze the situation from a range of different viewpoints. What would a government official say? A humanitarian aid worker? A data privacy advocate? Someone from the affected community?
That sounds incredibly thought-provoking. It forces students to move beyond simple black and white thinking and grapple with the nuances and complexities of real-world ethical challenges. I can see how that would be really valuable in a field like disaster prevention, where the decisions you make can have life or death consequences.
Exactly. And then you have de Bono hats, which is all about fostering creative thinking and problem solving.
Okay, this one sounds fun. Tell me more.
It's based on the idea that we all have different thinking styles, and each hat represents a different style. White is for facts and information, black for critical analysis, yellow for optimism and possibilities, green for creativity, red for emotions and intuition, and blue for process control.
I love that. It's like giving students a toolkit for thinking.
Exactly. So let's say they're working on a project to develop a new early warning system. They might put on the green hat to brainstorm out-of-the-box ideas, then switch to the black hat to analyze the potential risks and drawbacks, and then maybe put on the yellow hat to explore the potential benefits and positive impacts.
It's like they're trying on different lenses, different perspectives to get a more holistic view of the challenge.
Precisely. And it's a fun and engaging way to get students thinking flexibly and creatively, which is essential for coming up with innovative solutions to complex problems.
It sounds like this module is really breaking free from traditional lecture-based teaching and embracing a much more interactive, student-centered approach. Am I on the right track?
You are. It's about creating a learning environment where students are active participants, not passive recipients of information. And it's about recognizing that learning is not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about developing critical thinking skills, problem-solving abilities, and the ability to collaborate and communicate effectively.
It's about preparing them for the real world, not just for exams.
Exactly. It's about giving them the tools they need to succeed not just in their studies, but in their lives. And that, I think, is the most exciting thing about this Prevent module. It's not just about training future engineers or scientists. It's about nurturing a generation of problem solvers, innovators, and, dare I say, heroes who are equipped to tackle the challenges of a rapidly changing world.
Okay, I'm officially inspired. This all sounds incredible, but we haven't talked about assessment yet. I mean, How do we know if students are actually learning all this amazing stuff?
hmm
Is it all about exams and grades, or is there a more holistic approach?
That's a great question, and it's one that the Prevent Project takes very seriously. They advocate for a multifaceted approach to assessment, recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. So it's not just about those big end-of-semester exams.
Right. Are we ditching the traditional exam format altogether, or is there still a place for those in this new model of education?
Well, traditional exams definitely still have their place. They're useful for testing students' understanding of those core concepts and theories, making sure they've got that solid foundation.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't build a house without a strong foundation.
Exactly. But the Prevent Project encourages instructors to go beyond just exams and incorporate a variety of assessment methods, each one designed to measure different aspects of learning.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the rundown. What kind of assessments are we talking about?
Well, you've got your traditional written exams, which, like I said, are still good for testing those fundamental concepts. But then you've also got coursework, which allows students to demonstrate their practical skills and their ability to apply what they've learned to real-world scenarios.
So this could involve things like designing an early warning system, analyzing data from a simulated disaster, or even creating a presentation on the ethical implications of using AI in disaster response.
You got it. It's all about showing that they can not only understand the concepts, but also put them into practice. And then there's the mini project that students undertake in that second semester. Remember how we talked about that?
Yeah, that was the capstone project where they get to pull everything together and create something truly innovative and impactful, right?
Exactly. And the assessment for that goes beyond just a grade. Students are encouraged to present their findings to a panel of experts, simulating a real-world scenario where they might have to pitch their ideas to potential investors or government officials.
That's fantastic. It's not just about assessing their technical skills, but also helping them develop those essential communication and presentation skills.
Right. This module really recognizes that being a successful disaster prevention professional is about more than just technical prowess. It's about being able to communicate effectively, to collaborate with others, to advocate for your ideas. It's about being a well-rounded individual who can not only understand the science, but also connect with people, inspire action, and make a real difference in the world.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Mm.
From the 6 key learning objectives to those brain-boosting teaching methods and multifaceted assessment strategies, it's clear that this Prevent module is not just about teaching content. It's about empowering students to become lifelong learners, skilled problem solvers, and passionate advocates for a safer, more resilient world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a blueprint for how education can truly make a difference. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Ooh, I love a good parting challenge. What have you got for us?
I want everyone listening to think about everything we've discussed today. Those 6 learning objectives, the innovative teaching methodologies, the emphasis on real-world experience. Now imagine yourself as the course designer. You're building the ultimate disaster prevention curriculum.
Got it. What's the challenge?
What would you add? What unique twist, what innovative activity, what groundbreaking technology would you bring to the table to make this course truly exceptional?
That's a fantastic question. And a perfect note to end on. We'd love to hear your thoughts, share your ideas with us on social media, tag us in your posts. Let's keep this conversation going. But before we sign off, I do want to remind everyone that we've got links to all the resources mentioned in this episode in the show notes. So if you're feeling inspired to create your own disaster prevention course, or even just to learn more about this fascinating field, be sure to check those out.
And remember, the deep dive is always here for you, ready to guide you on your learning journey. We've got episodes on everything from the latest advancements in artificial intelligence to the ancient wisdom of Stoic philosophy. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and don't forget to dive deep.
Happy learning, everyone.